Oh, to everyone who comes in later. Okay. So let's jump into Trump and DeSantis here. So I posted it was on TikTok, a video about my frustrations, airing them. And a lot of people agreed, some people pushed back, but Trump had put on True Social. Always want to call them tweets, but they're truths. I never liked his title for his site, Truth Social. I don't know, it sounds a little pretentious, but Trump said Florida was doing great long before Ron DeSantis got there, because he's calling Ron DeSanctimonious, which I don't love that nickname. It's not a great nickname, in my opinion. People are fleeing from New York to Florida and other places because of high taxes and out of control crime, not because of Governor, thank you, President Trump, DeSanctimonious. Rick Scott did great, and even Charlie Crist had very good numbers. Sunshine and ocean, very alluring. So Trump is making the case that he's the reason why DeSantis is where he is, who he is. Trump makes that case, um, that he promoted him, got him there, but at the same time he undermines him. So that it's a weird thing that he's doing and has done. Like he did it with Nikki Haley too. Like he said, I basically promoted her to the UN to save the state where she's from so they don't have to have her around. And I'm like, so you gave her to the rest of the world? So things like, I don't want people to get me wrong. I don't mind people coming at each other. It's a primary, which Ron DeSantis is not in there yet, but people expect that he will announce, right? It'll come sooner rather than later, I think. Or it could just, I don't know, they announce like early summer or something. But if he's gonna do it, he'll announce. But he hasn't announced. So I expect people to butt heads and exchange insults and all that other stuff. I fully expect to do that. I do expect more substantive sort of grounded criticisms. So I don't think criticisms like this from Trump make him look good. Not because there's definitely things that he said in his site that were more problematic than this. So my problem isn't that this is so out of the box insane or something like that. I just don't think it's a good dig. I don't think it's a good dig at all. And then there's people who were like, no, Ron DeSantis is a very good governor and they like him. And people are noting like, okay, so you're gonna uplift Chris, but you're gonna pretend like DeSantis isn't a big deal. Like winning Miami-Dade is a big deal. That was a big deal. Winning, Florida by like 20 points, it was like 19, 20 points. That was a pretty big deal. So people really are fond of him. To pretend like people aren't, like you're removing some of their agency in their decision of why they like DeSantis is it's just not a good look. So I'm not fond of all these attacks and the obsession with DeSantis. I personally think Trump should focus more on what he has done, compare his record, especially early on, to Biden's record, which he totally wins, and try to just remind people of those golden years. And he should, if anything, he should really still set himself apart as the candidate who wants to keep you out of war, you know, because if anyone likes, Trump's for anything, it's his policies regarding his foreign policy. And we don't know how other people will be, there's other people who you suspect will be more neocon and stuff. Like, people are concerned about Nikki Haley and stuff. People are questioning things about Ron DeSantis, but where Trump stands on foreign policy. And that's a really important aspect of it. So I think he's got that going for him. I do. That's going to be a very strong bullet point for him. But he doesn't sound like this is like big boss alpha energy. That's not what this comes off as to me. And other times he's come at DeSantis, it sounds like, he even tweeted not tweeted, but you know what I mean. He even like wrote a status that was, I'm not, that had the energy of like, I'm not thinking about Ron, but I am thinking about Ron. And it just kind of seems like he's the wicked evil queen, upset that the mirror said that there's someone younger and prettier than he is, you know. So that's what the vibes I get, instead of that alpha, I'm coming in to win it, period, because I'm the best for the job. um he can make that case, but he needs to make that case, because even if people feel more secure with certain things about Trump, like, oh well, we can overlook, some other tweets and other stuff like that, but and they genuinely like his policies better, at the end of the day, people aren't going to support you if they don't think that you can win. So the question is, who's going to be the most, Republican conservative person, who's going to push the values and the policies that you want, but who you also believe that you can win. So if he's wigs out people and they really do think that he can't win against Biden or whoever else they put up, then they're going to go with someone who they think will have a better shot with independents or moderates who just frankly are sick of Trump and are over him. So and people will feel that's very unfair when you talk about these things. People say Trump did all these things, how can people betray him, etc. I'm like, Trump did do a lot of things that people appreciate, that were good, that were unlike other presidents in our lifetime. Like, we can acknowledge those things. So people want to overlook some of Trump's flaws for his benefits, correct? And I get that, I understand that totally, but at the same time, people can question, well, what you did was so important, and what you can do is so important. So why can't you exercise restraint in some areas, and we can and reverence the position that you're in, or the position that you were in, or the position that you need to have, and just clean up some of these, personality quirks that people don't love, and just show some more discipline, show some more restraint, and make people feel more comfortable on that route, to show people that, the things that they didn't enjoy about the first term, that we won't experience again. So people are weighing the option of, is there somebody who's going to be kind of as good or just as good, and we don't have to deal with the drama. So those are things that people are going to think about in a primary. And I don't care how much you love the guy, those are things that people have to really think about. So I don't know who all is advising Trump and what his team is like, but the discipline, like a couple weeks leading into the 2016 election, he had a lot of discipline with his page, with his Twitter account. I would like to see some more discipline within the next, year or so. I don't think that'll happen though. But let's talk about this idea of Trump and DeSantis teaming up, and DeSantis being the VP, because people say, oh, I think DeSantis will make a great VP and they should be on the same ticket and stuff. I think I can understand why people want that. I think it's a terrible idea. I think it's an absolutely terrible idea. First of all, the job of vice president can be very important. Like, you're a heartbeat away from the presidency, so it's a job to take seriously, especially if the president is very up in age. You definitely want someone solid who would take over the role as president afterwards. Absolutely. There are vice presidents, who get in and they work hard, and you put them in particular roles and they excel, and you really utilize them, like a Trump utilized Mike Pence and had, during the pandemic, and he was like the point person for a lot of like the governors and so on, and so he utilized Pence and even like leftists like Newsom and Cuomo at first. I don't know if you guys remember this, but at first people were saying that the White House was doing very good. They were very attentive to their needs, and they, they gave them what they needed, etc. They were very good at that. So the media would press them, and I think maybe it was even Newsom one time. It was one of those guys, and they're like, they kind of like, I know you guys want me to say something bad, but the truth is, and eventually, like, there was a shift. They were like, no, everything sucks, they suck, etc. because of politics. But Mike Pence, he was doing a good, solid job with that role. And then there's vice presidents who do so much that people assume that they're the shadow president, like Dick Cheney. you know um so vice presidents can have a huge impact. On the other hand, they can also be Kamala Harris. It'd be someone so terrible that you basically just want her to have a few speeches here or there, maybe talking to kids about telescopes, and you get to see the moon with your eyes, as if we weren't doing that with our eyes without a telescope. Like, what else would you use? So yeah, Kamala Harris, totally not an impressive person. I don't want her to be the president. So hopefully nothing will happen to Joe that will he can finish out his term and then fail in re-election, and she will just go off somewhere. I guess she will always be their icon or whatever because she was the VP, but she's just awful at her job. But they keep her role very limited. So it's a very vice president's a very important job, but it doesn't have to be, I guess is what I'm saying. So I think Ron DeSantis being the vice president is something that he doesn't need. And you could say the benefit of being vice president is well, I guess a lot of people can make benefits. I mean, Joe made a lot of benefits from being the vice president, and his family, Hunter, and making money off the family name and influence, etc. But that's like shady stuff. You don't really want people to engage in that stuff. But a political reason why you'd want to do it, besides like making connections, etc., is to just really raise your profile for when you run next time. Ron DeSantis has a really big national profile right now. Like, people are always talking about Ron DeSantis, people who hate him, people who love him. I know so many people who are fleeing Michigan to go to Florida. There was somebody I talked to this weekend, a friend of mine, they're like, we don't know when things are gonna get better here, so we're gonna go buy a house. We're leaving. So and it's several people that, at least that I know, but we know that Florida's population has grown as people have escaped to go there. And I don't blame them. I mean, somebody has to stay and try to save the darn state, but I totally get people trying to go to Florida. But DeSantis is a competent governor, even though people on the left may not love all of his like culture war stuff. They still know he's a pretty competent governor, though. So he'd have to leave his governorship for the last bit of his term, so to be the VP. And I guess he, instead of him waiting, if he waited to just run for president, then he'd be 2 years past being governor. I really think for him to run, the best time, there's no time like the present, so I think he should shoot a shot. But he doesn't need the bump in his name ID to be vice president. And I think the real tragedy would be if him and Trump, if Trump won and DeSantis was his VP, who knows what their relationship will be 4 years later. Who knows what that will end like? Because, mind you, when Mike Pence was running as a VP, people suspected that he'd have presidential aspirations, and he obviously does. He obviously does. But he probably did not expect to garner such, hatred from folks on the right and also his former boss. So you don't know how that relationship will turn. And I remember after the presidential debate, Trump had his first debate with Hillary. It didn't go so hot. First 15 minutes he was good, and then it just kind of went all downhill. And she planted that story at the end, which was obviously coordinated with the media or something, about that beauty test contestant or whatever, who was a little overweight, and Trump had tried to help her lose weight or something. I don't know. That story went on, but it wasn't a great first debate. And then Mike Pence had his debate, and he won his debate, and the media was like giving him raving reviews. And it's not because they like Mike Pence, but I think it was mostly because they wanted to troll Trump, and they wanted Trump to feel small and jealous. And they were even saying like, oh, it looked like he was really auditioning, for 2020 to run. That's what it looked like for Mike Pence. So that was the narrative going on. So I do believe that Mike Pence always had, aspirations to be president, and probably became VP hoping that this would also help him to that point. But it did not end, well for the two of them. So I think there's a lot of risk, because Trump will bring in people and they're great, and compliments, etc., blah blah blah. Then people they don't see eye to eye with Trump, and then Trump gets rid of him, and then he trashes them and talks about how stupid and dumb they were. So I think I think it would be a risk, and then he'd still be waiting his turn. So I don't think there's really any benefit for DeSantis himself to be Trump's VP. I don't. I also don't know if there's much benefit for Trump either, to be frank, because a lot of things that people like about DeSantis is that they feel that he's Trumpian but restrained, and can just govern the day to day well, so they feel that he's a polished version of the guy that they already like. I'm not saying they don't have differences, like the nitty gritty stuff. Sure, they all have differences, but is having like a mirror image of yourself or what people like on the same ticket going to be the thing that gets other people to sign on? So I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, you get someone from like a different area, hoping that that person will pull in folks from their state to vote on your ticket. So there's all kind of things that you consider. I'm just not sold on the idea that the two of them would be a good ticket, and I definitely don't think in the long run it would be a good move for DeSantis. I think if DeSantis wants to run, he should shoot a shot now. You when you got some iron, you got to strike while it's hot. So he could miss his opportunity. He may not have this sort of raving reviews and adoration for people now than he would have some time later in 26. So I think you should go for it. Now the only problem is that, well, can he beat Trump in a primary? And you can always run again even if you lose a primary. But if he wins the primary, is Trump going to just be like, okay, you won fair and square, or is he going to be a problem for the rest of the election and even try to run as an independent? Now, if he did try to do that, that would be very unfortunate, and I would like to think that he wouldn't do it. The reason why I assume most of all why he wouldn't is that's a lot of money to fund himself. But I don't know. He could, because he's petty, and I don't like that. I don't know that answer deep within my bones. I don't like that. I don't like that. So anyway, if you think those two are the dream team or something, and that I could be wrong, and they could like come together, but well, I'm not saying they won't join up, but I stand by it not being a good idea unless it happens and I'm proven wrong. But just my 2 cents, I'm sharing them. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk about this story with NPR in Florida. Gosh, this is a crazy one. Um, well, before I jump into that, let me just briefly mention that in Ohio, they're starting a ballot initiative to make abortion a constitutional right, I guess, in the state's constitution in Ohio. And some people are like, oh, that would get shot down. That would get shot down in Ohio. And I hope that's the truth. I hope that's so. Um, Ohio is obviously redder than Michigan, but I knew that if the ballot initiative in Michigan got passed, they would just move on to other states. So even though I talk about it a lot, and I have audience from Michigan, but there's other people who aren't from Michigan who follow. I would say I think this is really important because if this is successful here, they're going to try it other places. And I said Ohio is next. So apparently there's a reproductive freedom radical pro-abortion group that's pushing this, and Planned Parenthood and Pro-Choice Ohio and Abortion Fund of Ohio and ACLU is all pushing for it. So these are some actors who you know well, Planned Parenthood and ACLU were involved, obviously, in the Prop 3 initiative in Michigan. And you can say, oh, well, people don't want to support abortion like that. Look, it's all, if people would have known, I think genuinely have known what was all in Proposal 3 and the repercussions of it, I think it would have got shot down. But what actually made it on the ballot versus what it actually was were different. It was really egregious in my opinion. So if they kind of do similar things with the language, then you might have an issue. You might have an issue. So this is something that I will be, I guess, talking a lot about as it continues on. But people have to mobilize and really get this shot down. The church has to mobilize and get this shot down. Pro-life groups, you don't have to be a Christian to be pro-life. There are other groups as well who aren't affiliated with any sort of religion, or maybe they're pagan or whatever, but they're against abortion. You'll have to get some really clear cut messaging. I did not love all the messaging that was going around in Michigan. People said that they really liked my content and they thought it was really good regarding Prop 3, but um like Right to Life, their stuff was like, it's too extreme, too confusing. And I'm like, why too confusing? Like like I guess the hope was that if people are just confused about something, then they just won't vote for it. But it's not that people were confused, it's that people didn't know that they were being deceived. So I thought the messaging wasn't great around Prop 3, and I wish I had a bigger platform at the time to have made a difference. I did try, and a lot of people I know really did try, but we got to shut this down in Ohio because it will change the Constitution. So um, don't sleep on this, guys. If you're from Ohio, do not sleep on this just because you're pretty confident of what you think that the state won't do. You don't know how they'll word things on the ballot. Because if people don't even understand, like, there's so many compelling sort of myths around abortion anyway, like people believing, like, it's said that they'll regulate it up until like they'll have the right to choose or whatever up until like viability. People don't understand how viability kind of shifts and moves or whatever. But let's say it's 24 weeks, but then there's still like doors where you could still have it if the medical professional um deems that you can have it later. But so many people believe that women would not have an abortion that late unless it was like a medical emergency. And it's a really compelling myth. But technically it made it so abortion, you can have it up until the time of near birth, basically. So that's not an exaggeration. Is it something that is likely to happen a lot? Gosh, I hope not. But there's more people than what you think who get aborted, like after week 20. It's more than what you think. Anyway, just keep on the lookout for that. I'm gonna go into this NPR story because I do want to read through it. Oh boy. So parents raise concerns as Florida bans gender affirming care. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see as I read it. Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit, or a little bit more. It's pretty zoomed, but okay. So when 13-year-old Liz Bostock thinks back, she remembers feeling in between genders as early as preschool. Okay. Assigned male at birth, she identified as non-binary by 5th grade and decided 5th grade, y'all. 5th grade. Children questioning, they're having questions about gender and etc. That some kids can go through, but normally kids will grow out of that. But you have so much literature and praise and TikToks and all these videos and social media and these woke teachers and all these folks who are praising going into a particular direction. It's crazy to me. By the 5th grade, they are using they them pronouns and saying they're non-binary, which is a dumb thing anyway, but this is sad. But there's sadder stuff in here. We'll keep going. Now, a 7th grader in Gainesville, Florida, with a passion for manga and anime video games. And I hate that so many of these folks are so it's like so often you'll see they were into anime. What was it that did him? The sexy jutsu from Naruto. Oh gosh. There's side note. There's if you've seen What is a Woman, Matt Walsh's What is a Woman. There's a segment where he's talking to someone who is identifies as a wolf or something, and then they said that they watched an anime about wolves, and I'm like, it was probably Wolf's Rain. And it's like I said in a comment, and other people were saying, and I'm like, I don't know, it's a wee bit embarrassing. Like I love anime. That I haven't really I haven't watched an anime in a long time. It's just cringe that so many of these folks have that in their background or something. And a bedroom filled with stuffed animals, Liz identifies as female and transgender. I figured out that I actually felt like a girl, she says, but he's a boy. But I'm not someone who cares or respects people's like gender pronouns like that. But just for the sake of the article, I'm just gonna let you know I'm gonna read the article. Not just in between. Liz's birth certificate now bears her new legal name and gender marker. After months of counseling with a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, Liz started receiving puberty blockers last August. Every 3 months, she gets a shot of Lupron, a gonadotrophin releasing hormone, or GnRH, that essentially presses the pause button on male puberty. So that's a press pause. That's something that crazy lady in Matt Walsh's documentary who's like, can a chicken cry? Can a chicken commit suicide? If you haven't seen What is a Woman, you should definitely see that, because that was a wild scene. Lupron, they do give that drug to sexual predators in prison to chemically castrate them. So just want to put that out there. The goal is to keep her body from developing further in ways that don't align with her gender identity. It's been amazing, says her mother, Virginia Hamner, who says she's seen her daughter light up with gender affirming care. It's fun and exciting for her to be able to be exactly who she wants to be, she says. But under new rules passed by Florida's medical boards, it's unclear whether Liz will be able to continue on to further treatment. The future is uncertain for trans kids' medical care. Florida is one of a growing number of states to prohibit gender affirming care for transgender minors. It is the only state to do so not through legislative action, but through a vote of its medical boards. With encouragement of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the state's Board of Medicine and Board of Osteopathic Medicine both passed rules that will ban gender affirming care, such as puberty blockers and cross sex hormones, as well as surgical procedures for new patients under the age of 18. As for existing patients, such as Liz, who may want to proceed on cross sex hormones, estrogen, in her case, testosterone for transgender males, the language of the new rules is vague. There's a lot of uncertainty about that, says Hamner, who worries that the rules might be tightened still further. It doesn't feel like it's over, which makes living in Florida really challenging right now, she says, because you're basically being told that your child shouldn't be able to be who they are, and that it would be better if they didn't exist in the way that you, medical professionals, and the child who is thriving feel is best for the child. So this language is so like hysterical to me when people are like start saying about exist or whatever, because people don't affirm you. You don't just, I don't know, it's not like Tinker Bell or fairies or something in Peter Pan. You say you don't believe in fairies, the fairy drops down dead, and it's like they want you to clap so you can bring it back to life, or else they're just gonna be, but even that's still death. I'm talking about not existing. That's it's so hysterical. It's language I just can't respect. But um you are, this person is a boy. This person is a boy. Um that is who they are. And going on hormones, that is something that's a lifelong thing. And this is at least they say that the child got counseled for months, because some people get quick turnarounds, very little pushback. But I don't know what all went on with the doctor to get to the point where, like, yeah, they're transgender, but making those chemical effects on their bodies at that young age without being able to know the true repercussions. And they can be told, but you can't possibly know or grasp how much your life will be altered um, for going that route. So these poor kids. For Liz, the fear of what's to come could mean future outside of Florida. If it gets too bad, I'm already thinking about for high school going to a boarding school that isn't in Florida, she says, which would honestly make things a lot easier. Governor DeSantis has targeted LGBTQ rights and has made parental rights, especially in education, a running theme as the eyes of potential White House bid. The irony, says Hamner, is that her parental rights are being trampled. It's a gut punch, she says. If her child said, "I feel transabled, mom. I would like to cut off my arm," would that be within her right to do that as a parental right, or would that be harming her child needlessly? So the parental rights and education bill, by the way, that she's referencing and talking about parental rights, at least this article going that route, is about how schools are not allowed to hide information from the parents regarding their child's mental health. And also, they cannot teach them things about sexual orientation and gender identity until like at least above third grade. Unless it's deemed in a way inappropriate, which in my opinion, I don't think it went far enough, but they were probably trying to be as least controversial as possible, which obviously didn't happen. So they might as well have gone all the way. So the the way that they talked about the parental rights and education bill, the don't say gay bill, was just really ridiculous. Politicians disagree with medical consensus on the safety of gender affirming care for minors. Dozens of leading U.S. medical groups, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, and the Endocrine Society, endorsed gender affirming care as a time tested, effective, medically necessary, and potentially life saving. But Governor DeSantis has called the treatment example woke ideology infecting medical practice. Yep. The state's Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, who was appointed by DeSantis, called the treatments highly experimental, risky, and unproven. Yep. Board of Medicine member Dr. Hector Vila said that by banning gender affirming care, the board was acting to protect children from irreversible harm. Yep. The Tampa Bay Times has reported that many of the members of the Board of Medicine who were appointed by Governor DeSantis have contributed to his campaigns or political committee. Probably so. A pediatric endocrinologist, Dr. Kristen Dayton, who runs the youth gender program at the University of Florida in Gainesville, disputes claims that gender affirming care is risky and experimental. There are tons of evidence to back my assertion that is safe and healthy for children. She says it's pretty offensive to me because I pride myself in being someone who always follows the evidence, does the right thing for my patients. Dayton worries about her patients, many of whom haven't yet started on puberty blockers or hormones and now won't be able to. People are feeling incredibly panicked and sad and distressed and coming to our office saying, what are we going to do when this passes? And frankly, we don't have the answers. Dayton's colleague. So I understand that people do gender affirming surgeries and care and stuff to try to match how they feel as far as their gender identity. But why can't if is it really the worst thing in the world that you try to be in your mind a woman without having to go through these other physical things that would trick your body into trying to match a biological reality? Because if you have to do these, because it really does undermine the argument that it's just a social construct, because you're really trying to match that biological reality, that wall that you'll never be able to really break down. You'll never be able to break it down. I can't make this analogy of you're chasing a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow and you'll never be able to catch it. You'll never be able to catch it. So there are people like something Green, Felix Green, and he has gender dysphoria, and he talked about how the book When Harry Became Sally really spoke to him, and he thought it was a kind and compassionate book, but of course, like Amazon and folks thought it was terrible, and they wanted to get it taken down, and hate speech, and that was a whole saga. So he like wrote uplifting the book and sticking up for it. But he's someone who's come to terms about his feelings in his body, but hasn't gone the extra route to change who he is. So I mean, if you have gender dysphoria, I don't know if you're ever going to really feel comfortable within in your body. I mean, that is what the dysphoria is. But people say things like they'll say it's not a mental illness, but then will say things like if people don't get the treatment, this particular treatment to alter their bodies, then they will do self-harm. And I'm like, so the math ain't mathin' there. So is there other ways that we can get to the root of the dysphoria and try to come to terms with that? Because some of the trainings that I've seen from these clinics, I went through one day, and they were acting out a scenario of someone who wasn't eating, a boy who wasn't eating because he wanted to have a slender body, because he wanted to be a girl. And they told the parents and tried to convince them to do like hormones and etc., because this person was self-harming. And as someone who knows someone who has had anorexia, I was disgusted watching that sort of video, because I'm like, that is not how you get to the root of that sort of self-harm, to just mask it with drugs. That is not what you do to really help that person, and then to use that sort of emotional distress for that child to try to bully the parent into accepting that this is the way to help your child. And this wasn't a real scenario. This was just like a training exercise. They're really, really gung-ho on this being the way, this being the method for these kids, for these really young kids. Dayton worries about her. I think I already read that. Dayton's colleagues, clinical psychologist Jennifer Evans, says she's extremely concerned about what the ban will mean for her patients' mental health. She cites research showing that medical transition has clear benefits. Depression rates go down. Along with that, suicidal ideation attempts go down. So that there's, you gotta train the kids or they'll off themselves. Anxiety goes down, which I've mentioned this before, but if you're females just have like more anxiety dudes will typically have. And when they start getting some of that testosterone, some of those like anxieties will start going away. But that's something that they'll feel kind of immediately, but that doesn't mean that that's they're masking issues, they're masking problems, but that doesn't mean that they're getting to the root of why they feel the way that they feel. Like Kat is, I think, it is an example of someone who talked about, I think, the effects of like anxiety and other stuff going away, but she's detransitioned. She's a very good singer, by the way. Doctors say medical care is being politicized and creating a climate, which, by the way, if you don't know her story, you can look it up. She's talked about it. I first saw her on TikTok. She's on Twitter. She's on YouTube. But she was not a child. She was someone who got prescribed like testosterone very quickly. When she came to this self realization that she had gender dysphoria, was transgender, and she was, as a singer, she started taking the testosterone, and one day she tried to hit like a high note and she couldn't quite get there, and it would have been easy for her to do in the past, and all of a sudden she couldn't do it. And that was one of the things that started to kind of really snap her back into place a bit. And she talks about other things as well, but I'm also a singer, so I could like relate to that horrific fear of not having your voice and being able to do something like that. And so people in the comments were like, didn't you figure that would be like, that your voice would change? And she's like, it's one thing being told it, and even like knowing it to some degree, but do those things really, do the consequences of what you're doing to your body like really sink in? Apparently not. So like that was something that like hit me, because I'm like as someone else who's saying, so all these little kids, she was not a child when she went through that. We're talking about little kids. We're not talking about adults. The board's saying adults can't do that. We're talking about minors. These doctors are insisting that minors should be able to do this. Doctors say medical care is being politicized and creating climate of fear. The new rules haven't taken effect yet, but providers and advocates say they've already had a chilling impact. Several gender clinics in Florida have shut down. Good. Under the new rule, violators could lose their medical license and face steep fines. Here's what Tallahassee mom named Sandy heard from her transgender son doctor, who explained that he will not prescribe anything beyond the son's current puberty blockers. One thing he has said several times is, "I don't want to go to jail," she recounts. As another family told NPR, the doctor said, "I don't look good in orange. To be clear, jail time is not a penalty under Florida's new rules, but many fear that sanctions could be toughened. That fear is shared by some families, which is why NPR agreed to only use Sandy's first name. We would love to be shouting at the top of our lungs all the time about these issues," she says, "but there's just fear of not knowing what's coming in the future. and how transgender families will be retaliated against. Just look at Texas, she says, where the state investigated parents of trans kids for child abuse. When NPR visited her home, she was wearing a t-shirt that says "Believe Trans Kids." I probably have a shirt for every day of the week, she says with a laugh. It's a great conversation starter. This is so dumb. I've told kids get things wrong all the time. Kids do not know their hopes, their dreams, or like, how many kids what did you want to be when you were a kid? Did you grow up and be what you thought you were going to be? Like, how many kids know for sure, are so certain of things? Adults aren't certain of things. And a kid taking puberty blockers and hormones and becoming slaves of big pharma for the rest of their life, and you're saying just believe the trans kids? When I was a kid, my dad was telling me that heaven, when we get to heaven or whatever, then I'd have, like, he was saying I'd have like powers. I don't know if he was talking about like post trib or something, but he was talking about like we'd have powers like the X-Men, and this was like in the height of, he didn't mean like everybody shooting lasers out their eyes, and he just meant like superpowers, I guess, or flying, except a strong, I don't know exactly, but he was saying, all he said is we'd have powers like the X-Men. And I said, this is in the height of like the 90s X-Men cartoon. This is what I was watching. So I got really excited and I said, Daddy, kill me, please. So that's what I told my dad. And of course he didn't listen. And if he was concerned, and he had explained to me why that was a bad thing, and he learned to choose his words more carefully. But there are other people who are like, I wanted to be a ninja, or I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle, or I wanted to be a Transformer, when they were kids. There are all sorts of things that kids want to be. My nephew really wants to be Spider-Man, and he can make a better argument for why he is Spider-Man than someone like Dylan Mulvaney can make an argument about why he's a woman. So just as fantastical and silly. But just saying believe the trans kids is nonsense. It kind of like it's just a saying with no merit to it if you just really stop and thought about it. Like people were saying believe all women with the Me Too, and yeah, believe women, but trust and verify, because women know women, and women know women who lie. So what's this? It was the dumbest thing. It was the dumbest thing. So you can't just automatically take people totally at their word. Parents of trans children worry about constant invalidation. Sadie's son, River, we're using middle name. He's not out yet to all the extended family. Started saying he was a boy and presenting as a boy when he's about 3 years old. 3 years old. That's pretty crazy. That was when I was like, oh boy. That's when I was like, this is a crazy story. I had to plug in my computer. It's like the light switch went off, Sadie recalls. River is now 12, a 7th grader who loves rock climbing, math, and fishing, and is a whiz with a Rubik's Cube, a Rubik's puzzle. So many kids are such, especially girls and stuff, are tomboys, and they like to hang out with boys, and they like to hang with the boys, and they're tough and they're strong. And there's one girl who talked about on Twitter how when she was a girl, she would only do like boy things, and she even talked about chopping off her boobs. But when she got older, she just realized she idolized her brother. She just idolized her brother and wanted to be like him. Not that she just wanted to not be a woman. And now she's a girly girl, woman. My sister Angelina, she would say, I'm not gonna be a girly girl, because other ones of us were like into makeup and stuff. Not me, but other sisters, boys and all that stuff. And she's just like, I'm not going to be a girly girl. And she'd wear baggy t-shirts and jeans and stuff all the time. And she was a tomboy and she was weird. And we're all weird, don't get me wrong, but she was gross. Like she didn't want to talk about boogers and things. She'd say things to gross you out. And then not too long ago my sister was talking about how I you're like, you didn't want to be around us. And I guess they thought I was gonna issue an apology, and I was just kind of staring my nose. I was like, you were weird. They all started laughing like I had a reasonable explanation. Um, but she started liking some boys. She started slimming down, and she started, wearing some cuter, tops and stuff. She still likes her t-shirts. She still likes her t-shirts and sweat and hoodies and stuff. But she's a mom, she's married, she's got kids. She grew out of that. Some of it anyway. But she was like the type of person who would be late to work to finish because she had to finish her makeup. So things change. Things can change very radically. And I've heard from so many women that they're glad that they grew up in a different time. But having a child and saying that they are presenting as a boy at 3, that that's the parent looking for something. I'm sorry. That is the parent looking for something. 3 years old. 3 years old. River is now 12, a 7th grader who loves rock climbing, math, and fishing, and is a whiz at the Rubik's puzzle. Sadie says she's seen her son flourish in the past year since he started on puberty blockers. Oh, gosh, so young. I have this glorious picture right after he got his first puberty blocker shot when he was literally like ear to ear smiling. She says he's glowing. I felt like he could finally put his shoulders down, like relax. In the current climate, she worries about what she calls a constant invalidation of who River is, constantly seeing that who you are is political debate or an agenda item on anyone's list, she says, makes you feel less than human. Sadie says River has always been this solid force within himself. And so the visualization I have is whenever there's more of this anti-trans rhetoric, is just chipping away at that solid block of who he is. The relentless focus on trans kids is demoralizing for her as well. There are some days that you look at everything going on and you are just paralyzed by fear of what's coming at your kid next, she says, but you can't show that to your beautiful, wonderful trans kid. And it's exhausting, it's so exhausting. Sadie is on regular calls with other families who have trans kids, many of whom are planning what she calls escape routes. Okay. They're considering moving out of Florida to more trans friendly states. She and her husband think about it too. They think about moving to Oregon where they have a family, but it's hard to imagine uprooting their entire support system. The fact that you have to consider rehoming your family to have access to healthcare in the United States in 2023 is ridiculous. She says, I just want my kid to be happy and healthy. And I just don't think that's a lot to ask. Transgender advocates vow to fight the new rules in court. Nicole Parker, director of transgender equality for LGBTQ civil rights group Equality Florida, has talked with a number of families who are actively planning to leave the state. They're like, listen, the healthcare for my kid is number one priority. And there are states who will allow that to happen seamlessly. And I'm not going to sit here and just wait in limbo to see what happens. As a born and raised Floridian, Parker says, I truly feel Florida is a place for everybody. And we need to make sure that we stand firm in that. And it just makes me feel sad to see where we are because this isn't the Florida that I was born in. Trans advocates have vowed to fight Florida's new rules in court. Simone Chris, director of the Transgender Rights Initiative with the nonprofit public interest law firm Southern Legal Counsel in Gainesville, is among the lawyers who will lead the fight. How much longer? We're almost done. She keeps a close eye on states that want to ban gender affirming care, not just for minors, but for adults too. I don't think that this is going to slow down. She says, I think that more and more states are going to ban, likely first for minors and then, try to move on to adults, which is why I think it's so critical that we stop them here in Florida. It can feel overwhelming and so crushing, Chris admits, when she considers a cascade of states that want to ban gender affirming care. It's hard not to feel like we're losing on a daily basis, which can be very demoralizing. It really does take a toll, she says. All we can do is keep fighting. So, yeah. Chloe Cole, who I'm sure many of you probably heard of, she's really a darling of this issue, but she was a kid who was on puberty blockers, and as a young teenager, they chopped off her breasts, and they told her parents um, that if she doesn't transition, she could kill herself. So that's a sort of emotional blackmail that they do throw at parents. And again, I'm not saying that gender dysphoria is not real. I just question the push for people to become slaves of big pharma. That's what I really question. And I think people are definitely doing this because there's a lot of financial gain in all this stuff. So, well, kudos to Florida for trying to protect minors. Again, you can say all this stuff, but to grasp what could all happen to your child, how can you possibly know? How can you possibly know what will happen in the end? So that's a show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It'll be interesting to continue to watch it because I'm sure there'll be lots of lawsuits and etc. In the great state of Florida, where freedom lives. unlike other states like mine. Please go blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at the site. Check out different merch that I have as well. And please make sure that you go ahead and look at, of course, Guys Blatantly Against Abortion. That's my book that's available for pre-order. And I will see you guys tomorrow.